Today, we're taking a delicious trip down memory lane to explore the classic soups that brought so much warmth and comfort to countless American households during the 1970s. Whether you grew up slurping these dishes after school, or you're just curious about the era's beloved flavors, stick around. We've got some fun facts, nostalgic tidbits, and mouth-watering recipes you won't want to miss. Number 1. Chicken and dumplings soup. This comforting bowl stood out in the 1970s as a staple that bridged the gap between rural traditions and the evolving American suburban lifestyle. Many baby boomers recall their mothers simmering a pot of chicken stock, thickening it with flour or cornstarch, then dropping spoonfuls of biscuit-like dough on top to create those iconic dumplings. With families juggling work, school, and new social dynamics, convenience was a major selling point. Yet older cooking methods and recipes, passed down from grandmothers who lived through the 1930s or the hardships of the 1940s, remained deeply influential. Mothers who prepared this dish drew on a long history of hearty, filling meals designed to stretch limited budgets and feed large households. As magazine articles and community cookbooks of the 1970s suggested ways to save time, some began to incorporate canned chicken broth or pre-cut poultry pieces. This blending of convenience and tradition became a hallmark of the era, allowing women who were entering the workforce or managing busy suburban homes to keep one foot in the nostalgic past. Research into archived newspaper recipes shows that many families also sprinkled in a handful of frozen peas or carrots for extra color and nutrition, reflecting a growing awareness of balanced meals. The dumplings themselves could vary from fluffy biscuit styles to rolled flat dough strips, indicating a mix of regional influences crisscrossing America. During the golden age of TV dinners and quick-fix suppers, chicken and dumplings stood out as a comforting return to homemade fare, tying children's memories, especially Gen X kids, to the soothing aromas wafting through kitchens with floral print wallpaper and checkered linoleum floors. Ads on local television stations sometimes featured mini-segments demonstrating how to make dumplings, reaffirming this soup's enduring popularity. Even older relatives, who remembered America before the technological boom, happily noted how this single-pot wonder brought everyone together at the dinner table, despite an increasingly hectic pace of life. Number 2. Corn chowder. The 1970s saw an increased interest in regional American cuisine, and corn chowder, with its roots in New England cooking, found its way into kitchens nationwide. Families took advantage of canned creamed corn or frozen kernels, pairing them with potatoes, onions, and bacon to create a velvety base. This soup satisfied two major trends of the time: the desire for quick meals and the nostalgic pull of older traditions from coastal or rural regions. Articles in popular food magazines stressed how this soup could be dressed up or down. Some recommended a garnish of chopped chives and grated cheddar cheese, while others advocated for stirring in a dash of hot sauce to reflect the era's emerging fascination with bolder flavors. Baby boomers might recall the ads on TV depicting families gathered around a large pot, with mothers happily ladling out steaming bowls of creamy goodness. Meanwhile, Gen X kids often remember returning home from school to find the scent of corn mingling with sizzling bacon, the aroma weaving through small suburban homes decorated with 1970s color palettes like avocado green or harvest gold. Encouraged by a growing focus on nutrition, home cooks added carrot slices or green peppers for extra vitamins, and editorial columns in newspapers emphasized how chowder was a comforting alternative to heavier dishes. The convenience factor was clear. Families could open a few cans and combine them with staple ingredients to feed everyone without much fuss. The older generation, who might have grown up in the 1930s, appreciated how chowder offered a satisfying meal that harkened back to simpler times, while also embracing the new wave of packaged goods that made life easier. Contemporary blog posts and YouTube channels dedicated to retro recipes often rank corn chowder high on the list of crowd-pleasing soups that bridge generational tastes, underscoring its role in connecting American nostalgia with evolving culinary habits. Number 3. Navy bean soup. This hearty bean-based soup has long been associated with the U.S. Navy, but it carved a place for itself in 1970s households thanks to its frugal use of pantry staples. Parents who grew up under the influence of Depression-era frugality instinctively knew how to stretch a ham bone or leftover chunks of pork to flavor dried navy beans. The practice of slow cooking these beans all day in a big stock pot or crock pot fit perfectly into the busy schedules of that decade. allowing mothers who were balancing work and family life to set it up in the morning and come home to a nearly finished dinner. In analyzing a variety of vintage cookbooks and periodicals, it's evident that recipes varied widely. Some called for chopped carrots and celery to add color, while others favored a simpler approach focused on onions and a bit of garlic. Baby boomers often grew up associating navy bean soup with winter evenings, or times when money was tight, a comforting smell that permeated the house and made everyone feel taken care of. The 1970s also saw an upswing in do-it-yourself attitudes. People planted small gardens or used community farm markets, and these fresh vegetables routinely found their way into the soup. Food columns from the era highlighted how beans provided a substantial source of protein at a fraction of the cost of most meats, and that message resonated strongly with households dealing with economic fluctuations and gas shortages. Nostalgia for simpler decades, like the 1950s, when robust meals were a sign of a stable post-war America, kept navy bean soup in rotation. Gen Xers might recall picking around the beans or leaving the carrots behind. But in hindsight, it was often the flavorful essence of ham and simmered beans that lingered in their memories, tying them to a deeply rooted American culinary tradition. Number 4. Cheeseburger soup. The 1970s gave rise to an era of experimentation in the kitchen, spurred by a combination of new cooking appliances and a growing interest in playful twists on familiar dishes. Cheeseburger soup embodied that spirit. It combined ground beef, diced tomatoes, onions, potatoes, and plenty of cheddar cheese in a broth that mirrored the comforting flavors of an actual burger, minus the bun. Newspaper recipes and TV commercials hinted at how transforming a classic hamburger into soup form could excite kids who were bored with their usual dinner rotation. Many mothers found it an easy sell because it echoed the flavors of fast food without requiring a trip to the drive-thru. This era also saw the expansion of chain restaurants, but families still prized home-cooked meals, and cheeseburger soup struck a balance between convenience and novelty. Baby boomers who grew up on meaty, potato-based dishes recognized the flavor profile as something akin to a cheeseburger casserole, while Gen X children enjoyed the imaginative approach. Advertisements frequently showed bright images of melted cheese dripping off a ladle, capitalizing on America's love affair with dairy that dated back to mid-century campaigns promoting cheese's nutritional benefits. Analysis of online archives reveals that for many families, the addition of condiments, like a swirl of ketchup or a dollop of mustard, added an extra layer of fast food nostalgia to the dish. Some even garnished it with pickles or crumbled bacon to approximate the full burger experience. This playful dish demonstrates how the 1970s were all about embracing new trends while still clinging to comforting all-American traditions that linked back to the 1950s love for diners and drive-ins, forming a culinary bridge between generations. Number 5. Chicken tortilla soup. While Tex-Mex cuisine became more widely recognized in the 1970s, chicken tortilla soup emerged as a gently spiced, family-friendly dinner that reflected the nation's growing curiosity about Southwestern flavors. Mothers looking to expand their recipe repertoire found that sautéing onions, peppers, and spices alongside shredded chicken produced a tantalizing aroma, stirring up appetites even before the soup hit the table. Newspaper cooking columns praised the fact that basic ingredients, canned tomatoes, chicken broth, and shredded chicken, could be elevated with chili powder or cumin for a pop of flavor. Topping the soup with crispy tortilla strips, shredded cheese, or a dollop of sour cream offered a playful do-it-yourself element that kids enjoyed. Baby boomers who remembered the simpler tastes of their 1950s childhood were intrigued by this new wave of dishes that combined comfort with mild spice, bridging the gap between tradition and novelty. Gen Xers, who might have grown up nibbling on tacos from newly popular fast food chains, recognized the same savory notes in a homemade setting. This soup also fit neatly into the 1970s push for quick dinners. Leftover roast chicken could be tossed into a pot, while a couple of pantry items, canned beans, frozen corn, stretched the meal further. Advertisements often encouraged families to purchase seasoning packets, reflecting the broader trend towards store-bought mixes and convenience items. Many who have rummaged through old recipe cards or watched vintage cooking shows on YouTube discover countless variations of chicken tortilla soup, each shaped by local ingredients or personal preference. The dish represented the era's balance of resourcefulness, using leftovers and budget-friendly components, and adventurousness, introducing Southwestern seasonings, marking a shift toward the multicultural dining experiences that would explode in popularity in the decades to follow. Number 6. Bacon potato soup. A close cousin to the classic loaded baked potato, bacon potato soup satisfied the 1970s craving for hearty, stick-to-your-ribs meals that could be prepared without extensive fuss. Mothers would start by frying a few strips of bacon, reserving the grease to saute onions or leeks, if they were feeling fancy, then add diced potatoes, chicken stock, and a bit of milk or cream. The smell of bacon crackling in the pan was enough to draw the entire family into the kitchen. Articles from retro cooking magazines tout the soup's simplicity and affordability, pointing out that a few potatoes and a handful of bacon could be transformed into a warm, filling dish that pleased even picky eaters. For those who lived through the 1960s, the indulgent addition of crispy bacon and extra cheese felt emblematic of the 1970s shift towards slightly more decadent comfort foods. This is the same era that embraced fondue parties and elaborate cheese dips, so a soup that emphasized the richness of dairy and the salty crunch of bacon naturally became a household favorite. Community cookbooks from the time feature variations with added chives, sour cream, or even small bits of leftover ham, highlighting the era's resourceful approach to cooking. Gen Xers often recall swirling their spoons around to find every chunk of bacon, or sprinkling extra cheese on top, adopting the kind of playful mealtime rituals that built cherished memories. The popularity of bacon potato soup persists even now, with modern recipes paying homage to the old 1970s approach while trimming back on the heavier elements, illustrating how a classic can adapt to changing tastes without losing its nostalgic core. Number 7. Black bean soup. The push toward international and health-conscious dishes in the 1970s brought black beans into the limelight for many American families. Mothers interested in diversifying weekly menus looked to Latin American recipes featured in food magazines or TV cooking segments, discovering that black beans offered a wealth of protein and fiber. Cooking the beans with onions, garlic, bell peppers, and a blend of cumin, oregano, or chili powder produced a smoky, rich flavor that felt both exotic and comforting. Baby boomers who had grown up on more traditional, meat-heavy soups were intrigued by the possibility of a satisfying meal that placed beans center stage. In analyzing numerous recipe cards from that time, one finds that families often tinkered with spice levels to suit the household's tolerance, leading to a range of mild to spicy renditions. Some even pureed a portion of the beans to create a thicker consistency, a tip repeated in newspaper cooking sections to demonstrate how to use newly popular kitchen tools like blenders or hand mixers. Toppings such as fresh cilantro, diced avocado, and shredded cheese further nudged the soup into mainstream acceptance, revealing a transitional period in American cooking when families were becoming more comfortable with ingredients once seen as exotic. Gen Xers who recall the tangy interplay of sour cream over a hot bowl of black bean soup appreciate how it exposed them to a world of flavors beyond the standard dishes carried over from the 1950s. This soup also fit well into the 1970s ethos of stretching ingredients economically, since dried beans were affordable and leftover soup could be repurposed throughout the week. As a bridge between old America's simple cooking style and the new wave of global cuisine, black bean soup still resonates with those who value hearty, nutritious comfort foods. Number 8. Cabbage roll soup. Traditional stuffed cabbage rolls date back to various Eastern European cuisines, but in the 1970s, American mothers discovered a time-saving approach by turning them into a soup. This variation reflected the decade's pervasive love for dishes that required minimal hands-on time, yet delivered big flavor. Families that traced their heritage to Polish, Hungarian, or Russian roots found this recipe particularly enticing, as it kept the familiar ground beef, onions, tomatoes, and cabbage leaves without the extra step of rolling each leaf. Cookbooks from the era showcase the soup's practicality. Simply chop the cabbage, brown the meat, and simmer everything together. The result was a tangy, savory broth that evoked the comfort of homemade cabbage rolls, but with half the effort. For baby boomers, who might have had grandparents still making the traditional version, cabbage roll soup provided a nostalgic link to old world cuisine while suiting the faster pace of 1970s family life. Gen X kids often remembered picking out the bits of cabbage if they weren't fans of vegetables, yet the smell of tomatoes, garlic, and meaty broth simmering all day evoked a sense of warmth and heritage. Articles in local newspapers reassured readers that this soup was adaptable. You could use pork or turkey instead of beef, or add rice to make it more substantial. The 1970s signaled a transitional time in which families moved away from extensive all-day cooking, so a single pot method that delivered traditional flavors remained popular. Cabbage roll soup stands as an example of how families preserved their ethnic and regional identities while still embracing the demands of suburban living and the allure of convenience foods. Number 9. Shrimp gumbo soup. Gumbo has deep roots in Creole and Cajun cooking, and while it originated primarily in Louisiana, the 1970s saw this dish traveling far beyond its regional beginnings. TV cooking shows and newspaper columns introduced northern and western audiences to the spicy, roux-based stew packed with okra, shrimp, sausage, and a blend of peppers and tomatoes. Seafood soups were not always top of mind for those living outside coastal regions, but heightened interest in regional specialties and improved transportation meant shrimp became more widely available. Mothers seeking something new and flavorful took on gumbo as a culinary adventure, though they might have toned down the spices if their families weren't used to heat. The dish's complexity, building a roux, adding the holy trinity of onions, bell peppers, and celery, then gradually incorporating shellfish and sausage, felt daunting to some. However, the proliferation of step-by-step recipes in cooking magazines, as well as a flurry of restaurant ads featuring authentic gumbo, made it seem more accessible to home cooks. Baby boomers who embraced the cultural shifts of the 1960s often saw exploring Cajun and Creole food as part of a broader national trend toward appreciating diverse American heritage. Gen X kids might remember gumbo nights as an exciting departure from the usual tomato-based or cream-based soups, discovering new flavors and textures. Okra, with its thickening qualities, gave gumbo a unique consistency that set it apart from other soups or stews, introducing families to distinctly Southern ingredients. Archival searches across the internet show that many 1970s gumbo recipes adapted to local tastes, substituting items that were on hand, reflecting a decade that prized efficiency but still yearned for a dash of culinary excitement. Number 10. Mulligatawny soup. Although it hails from Anglo-Indian origins, mulligatawny soup found its way onto American dinner tables in the 1970s through cookbooks and cooking shows that showcased global fare. This soup blended curry spices with chicken, rice, onions, and apples, offering a sweet and spicy profile that was radical to many families used to more conventional soups. Baby boomers, who had come of age in the 1960s and witnessed an increasing interest in Eastern spirituality and culture, were intrigued by Indian flavors, but might not have had extensive access to authentic Indian restaurants. Thus, mulligatawny soup presented a gentle introduction to curry, with many recipes diluting the spice levels for American palates. Newspaper articles of the era often described the soup as exotic yet comforting, emphasizing that the key ingredients, chicken stock, mild curry powder, diced vegetables, could be found in typical grocery stores. Gen X children sometimes approach the apple pieces with curiosity, surprised by the combination of sweet fruit in a savory context. Meanwhile, mothers who had become more experimental in their cooking saw mulligatawny as an ideal way to break the monotony of the usual tomato, cream, or bean soups. Ads from spice companies and condensed soup brands regularly promoted curry-infused dishes, reflecting the shifting appetite of a nation ready to dip its toes into global cuisine. In line with 1970s resourcefulness, some cooks replaced fresh apples with applesauce or used leftover chicken from a previous meal, ensuring no waste. Like many of the decade's inventive creations, mulligatawny soup demonstrated America's growing willingness to incorporate international flavors into everyday life, while still craving the comfort and familiarity of a warm, home-cooked meal.